Hello there, welcome to Six Tackles with Gus. Great to be back for another week, and we're brought to you by our good friends at The Tab. How are you? Good morning.
Matthew Thompson, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm very good. You well?
I'm well.
To everyone in northern New South Wales and Queensland, we send our very best. Obviously a lot of flooding and a lot of damage in the wake of Tropical Cyclone Alfred, including the Titans training ground, which was flooded up to the crossbar.
Saw pictures of that, yeah. Crikey. A lot of flooding up in the area, a lot of damage. I don't think the cyclone was as big as what they were sort of anticipating, which was good, but
Thankfully.
Still a lot of water. A lot of water and some high winds and plenty of damage, so the clean-up job goes on.
And you got the Titans on Sunday evening.
I do, yeah. Very dangerous football team. They had a bye in round one, so they'll be nice and fresh. But
They're a good side, man for man.
They're a good side. I mean, if I could pick one team to coach, and I can't coach anymore. By today's standards, I'm not a coach, not in the same postcode. But if you could pick one team to coach, fair dinkum, I'd pick the Gold Coast Titans.
Are you serious?
They got great talent. Gee, they got good talent.
You'd pick the Titans of any team?
Of any team, right at this moment, yeah. I reckon
Wow.
they got great talent. Very exciting talent. I love the fact that Jaden Campbell's playing halfback now. Brimson to 5'8", Keeney's there. I know that's an injury to Kieran Foran, which is a loss for them, but they've got such speed out wide and their forwards are so good. Like Campbell Gillard's back this week, Mo Fotuaika, Tino Fa'asuamaleaui, Bo Fermor. They're all really good players and players.
David Fafita's on the bench.
David Fafita's on the bench. Well, that goes to show just how strong the side is. They got points in them. They got great attacking flair and points in them.
They've always had points in them. They haven't always been able to stop points.
Well, that's been their Achilles heel over the years, but that's got to turn around eventually. I guess we all anticipated once Des Hasler went there that would happen. Now he's had a second off season with them. I think they'll be much improved.
Now, totally off topic, you might have seen the headlines in the last 12 hours. I had a look when I woke up early this morning that Manchester United are going to build a new stadium.
Yes.
£2 billion.
Yes.
Have you seen the plan?
Yes.
It is unbelievable. It looks like a spaceship.
Incredible, yeah. We actually did some work on this. When I first started at Panthers back in 2011, 2012, we went to Venues New South Wales, which was, I think, chaired by John Quayle at the time, so I knew John well. And we were talking about stadium advancements for the Panthers out in that area and improving the stadium there. And we had a lot of discussions with government, and he said, put forward the most outlandish plan you can possibly put forward, like put everything in it. And they gave us designs from all around the world, designs where, like, the four sides of a stadium might be retail and commercial, it might be a hotel, it might be residential, and then you'd have the back of the house for the. So you would actually turn the stadium into a residential, hotel, commercial, money-making type machine without even anything being played in the middle of it. Plus the grounds that slide in and slide out and retractable grandstands. So you could have big bash cricket, you could have soccer, you could have rugby, and use the stadium a number of times during the year, because Penrith Park in them days were only using it 11 times a year for a home game, weren't using it for anything else other than junior league football. So, and he sort of gave us some plans from all around the world, and we did. And that's what really started the discussions at government level around Allianz and Accor, and then the building of the new Parramatta Stadium, because the Wanderers were just coming into being at the time, and they were looking for a home ground. And in the end, whilst we were first we were the first to go in and talk about it, Penrith sort of been last on the list was getting funding for it. They're getting funding now. They're going to have a new stadium in the next couple of years. But
did you put an outlandish stadium to them?
Yeah, absolutely. Had sliding grounds, and you could play cricket there. You could retractable grandstands, a roof on top of it. Like we went the whole hog in what the designs were, because you can always work backwards. There were also other thoughts of whether or not we build the ground over at the trotting track across the road.
That was going to be the plan, wasn't it?
There was talk about the Agricultural Society selling that and building the stadium there, so they wouldn't have to move out of Panthers Stadium before while it was being built. And then the harness racing, they were thinking about selling Wentworth Park Greyhounds down here in Glebe in Sydney and creating a racing centre out near Blacktown with harness racing and greyhound racing. And we also had the opportunity maybe to have Davis Cup tennis put a home base out in Penrith.
Really?
On the property across the road there near Panthers, where they're going to have 12 clay courts for Davis Cup training in Australia. So there was a whole range of things that we were sort of looking at the time. But in the end, Stuart Ayres, the local MP, came in and he said, look, it'll take 10 years, but you'll eventually get some funding for the stadium, which they have now, which is great. But, yeah, I sort of did a lot of work on what stadiums look like. And we're just talking off air about Allegiant Stadium over there in Las Vegas. To actually go over and see what a $2 billion stadium looks like and how it feels like is incredible.
Because I brought that up with you because I know it's unpalatable at the moment and people are struggling to pay bills, etc. But it would be for the benefit to sport and other things to have like a state-of-the-art stadium, maybe at City Olympic Park, for instance, like the Manchester United one, would be a huge shot in the arm.
Yeah, I think...
With a roof, with all of that stuff.
I think a roof is essential because that just opens up to so much more usage, and particularly if you can slide the ground in and out, if you can grow the grass outside and you can have different floorings for internally. Like Ep4 at the moment, I think is a racing track. Ep4 is our home game for the Bulldogs, but we can't use it.
Yeah.
We can't use it for the first 6 weeks because they'll have concerts or they've got other events on. The stadiums can be turned into anything, depending on the flooring and the how they move the stands around or how they move the seating around and everything. So there's some great models from around the world, and some of them are not just stadiums, like they're residential, hotel, commercial, retail type, adjoinings onto it. It's incredible. And you've got to look at parking and public transport and everything else to get people in and away. But even with the money that we've spent, like Allianz is brilliant from our standards, but it should have had a roof on it.
Probably should have, on reflection.
It should have had a roof on it. To actually go to stadiums that got a roof on it, and you see how good it is. I mean, there's no reason why Sydney shouldn't have one. I mean, we're the biggest city in the country. We should have that sort of entertainment venue available to us.
Anyway, if you're a Manchester United fan, they're going like busters this year, by the way. They're right down the bottom of the ladder and all the fans are blowing up. But hey,
they won't be there for long.
There's a new stadium coming.
No. Dear, oh dear, oh.
One stadium we will never change is Brookie.
No.
Never. Dog poo and everything.
Yeah. I often look at Brookvale Oval and I think you could do so much more with it, but nothing gets done.
No, don't touch it because Manly plays so well there. Which dovetails to my first question. Manly will not lose a home game this year.
No. I mean, it was brilliant in round one, but there's a long, long way to go. Someone will steal themselves, but they're brilliant at home, aren't they?
Well, they all but one game last year was sold out, and they've sold out round one.
Right, yeah. Right throughout I've been in this game a long, long time. Player, coach, and Brookvale is one of those grounds that you think you don't go there really thinking it's going to be a great day. They can have some tremendous days there at Brookvale Oval, and they're very, very hard to beat. And they started the season on fire. Finished last year all right. Remember, they went to Vegas last year, and halfway through the year were struggling a little bit, but got themselves into the top eight. Beat the Bulldogs in a great semi-final, and then I think fell to the Roosters the following week. But they've started this season brilliantly. The key to them is obviously Trebojevic, but they've got so much speed, so much flair. Not sure about the quality of the opposition they played the other night, whether they were on their game, but it was a great start to the season for them. No risk about it.
Can I just throw another one at you that I've been pondering for a little while? When he is fit and firing, I think Tom Trebojevic is the best player in the game.
Well, I've said plenty of times that I think he's one of the great scoreboard influences in the game. Like, he's one person that is constantly influencing the scoreboard. When he's fit and well, we're only talking about this the other day, and I mean the incumbent Origin fullbacks have been James Tedesco for a long time, and now Dylan Edwards, who's a 4-time premiership winning fullback and deserves his spot there.
Clive Churchill medal winner.
Yeah, but I kind of think it would be a travesty if Tom Trebojevic went through his career and didn't play Origin for New South Wales at some stage,
At fullback.
At fullback. When's that going to happen? If it's going to happen. Now, I'm not saying that he should replace Dylan Edwards now, because Dylan's doing the job, and they won the series last year, and he's the Premiership winning fullback and a great player. But Tom Trbojevic is such an influence on results. He influences the scoreboard. He's the most brilliant attacking footballer, fullback in the game. So it remains to be seen. I mean, injuries will come into play and different things, but...
Well, he's got to stay fit himself.
Yeah, and that's always been the issue.
But he looked at his absolute peak on the weekend.
He's a big man.
Yeah, he's huge.
He's a big man. Like, when you actually get close to him and see how big he is, he's a big man. And I guess the way he plays, it puts a lot of strain on his body, and he's had injuries, which doesn't help. But wonderful player. Great player. If he stays fit all year, gee whiz, Manly will be hard to beat in any game.
Brandon Smith would be a good fit for Souths.
Yeah, I think right at the moment. I've never met Brandon Smith. I only see what we see on TV, and it's quite easy to pick faults and think that probably he should carry himself differently at different times. I don't think he's malicious in what he does or anything like that. I think he's just a fun-loving kid who's a really good footballer. Little bit oil and water with the Roosters. It hasn't really worked out for them. Now he's had this injury. Is he going to South? Is that what they're saying?
I don't know.
Yeah, there was.
Well,
there would be
they've obviously cleaned house a little bit, the Roosters, and I mean he's not going to be the next year.
No.
Yeah, so maybe he goes sooner rather than
He's
later.
coming back from injury this year. I think he's not going to get back till halfway through the season. So, I mean, that would be an opportune time to go. But I think whoever gets Brandon Smith next will probably get the best of him. I think the experiences of being at Melbourne and then moving on and then going to the Roosters and it not working out for him, hopefully that settles him down and steels him into, what the life of a professional footballer should look like. And if he was to get to South Sydney under Wayne Bennett, I think that would be a great help to him and a great help to South Sydney.
When you say oil and water between he and the Roosters, what hasn't worked?
Well, I don't know. As I said,
do you mean on the field or you mean off the field?
On and off the field.
Right.
Yeah, on and off the field. Yeah, I mean,
why hasn't it worked on the field?
I think they bought him as a hooker, as a dummy half, and I don't think he's that.
I don't think he's a hooker either.
No, and I don't think they let Sam Verrills go, who I think's a really good hooker. He's playing for the Titans this week. I'm not sure what they thought they were getting when they bought him, but they kind of had Radley there, and I thought, well, how do you fit Radley and Brandon Smith into the same team? You can fit Harry Grant and Brandon Smith into the same team because it was a dynamic duo, really. Brandon Smith played most of his football, not at dummy half of the Melbourne Storm, but off the ball. And I think Roosters sort of bought him as a dummy half, or it appears as that.
Well, he sees himself as a dummy half.
Yeah, well, he's not. He's a dummy. He's very effective out of dummy half during play, but he's not one that's going to be there, like most dummy halves do. They get there 120, 130 times a game, and that's no good for Brandon Smith. He's better there going there and using his instinct, but he's so much more effective off the ball.
In this era of mobile middle forwards, he's perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think whoever gets him next will probably get the best of him. I really do.
On the Roosters, after Thursday night, it's panic stations.
No.
You never panic, do you?
There's nothing to panic about. Why are you panicking?
I'm not panicking. I'm asking you if they should be.
No, they're not panicking. Well, they shouldn't panic.
Just pick the same team.
It is what it is. Well, he's got to, because they've got to have time spent playing together. That's one thing they're really lacking at the moment. The other thing they're lacking is enough NRL experience in some of their younger players coming through. If I've got one criticism of the Roosters in recent years is that I think they've held on to some older players for too long, and I think they haven't transitioned younger players quickly enough through to the top grade. And I've often questioned why they would bring back a Michael Jennings, or they'd buy a Chad Townsend, or they were chasing Dane Gagai there at one stage. And I'm thinking, well, they're older senior players, and they've got so many good young kids in the system. If they're going to spend all that money on development, and they do development really well, they do it as any, they spend a lot of time and energy on their development pathways, but they're not transitioning enough of them. They're not coming through to first grade enough. They're not getting enough experience so that when they really need them, as they do now, they've got 20, 30, 40 games under their belt and they're starting to get their career underway. So, as I said at the start of this season in the preview, they've lost a lot of experienced talent, a lot of high-quality talent. They've probably tried to hold on to their winning run. They've been a successful team for the last 25 years, been brilliant. And they've probably tried to hold on to it too long at times, and that's cost them. But they've got some wonderful talent coming through the system, and they've just got to trust it. They've got to learn to lose with it, because then they'll learn to win with it. That's just how they are at the moment. It was disappointing the other night, and they ran into a hot side, and the Broncos were too good for them. But I wouldn't be panicking off the back of that. You can improve very, very quickly, particularly early season form. Early season form tends to go win-loss, win-loss, win-loss. And all those teams that copped a bit of a hiding in round one, you can guarantee they will bounce back performance-wise in round two. Not saying they'll win, but they will be much, much better in the space of 7 days. A week is a long time in rugby league. Funny game, rugby league. funny game.
Oh, there's some funny things happening this week as well. On the back of the news of Dylan Brown, Newcastle simply have to win a premiership in the next 10 years.
No. You don't have to do anything. They'd like to. And I guess everything they're doing at the moment is directed towards that, as it is with every club. I mean, every club should be wanting to win a premiership at some stage, but there's 17 teams in our competition now. It's soon to be 18 and soon to be 20. Everyone wants the same thing. Everyone wants to win premierships. Everyone wants to play finals football. And we're all chasing the same talent pool to try and do that. So, I don't think they must win a competition to justify what they're doing. Competition would be nice. I think for your fans, if you can be bouncing around the top 8, 7 or 8 years out of 10, and you can challenge for a title once a decade, I think that's as much as any fan can expect. That's why the likes of Panthers, Melbourne Storm, and Roosters have been phenomenal over the last 15 years, 20 years, because they've been so consistently at the top. Particularly Melbourne and Roosters they've had a wonderful period, and Melbourne's still doing it today. They're premiership favourites, but everyone else. There are clubs there that are having a long run of outs from finals football or premiership success, and it's not easy. But if you can keep yourself in contention and keep yourself around finals football, that pays the bills, that keeps the fans happy, keeps the membership ticking over, keeps the crowds coming to the games. They feel as though they're in the fight every week when they play. That's pretty much all you can ask for, and then. You get that special year where you don't get any injuries and your team plays consistently, and you get the bounce of a ball in a few close games, and all of a sudden you're in the finals and it's a different ball game. And if you can do that 7 or 8 years out of each decade and once a decade challenge for a title, I don't think fans would want any more than that or expect any more than that. I think Newcastle will play finals football at least 6 or 7 times in the next 10 years. They should. Whether that manifests itself in a premiership success, I don't know. But, what they've done with the Dylan Brown thing is there is a plan there for it. You can criticise the money. You can criticise whether or not that individual player is worth that money. You can even question on what we've seen of him whether or not he's the player that we think they're looking for. What we think they're looking for and what they're looking for might be two completely different things. One of the points I raised on 100% Footy on Monday night was they said, it's a desperation buy because they've missed out on so many players. Well, maybe if Dylan Brown was on their books, they wouldn't have missed those players. Maybe Dylan Brown is the attraction that they need to bring other players to the club. And I used the example of the Bulldogs signing Matt Burton several years ago when they were a wooden spoon team. And then the re-signing of Matt Burton was so vital because I say without Matt Burton, there's no Cameron Ciraldo, there's no Viliami Kikau, there's no Steve Crichton, there's no Satili Tupanua, there's no Connor Tracy, there's no Bronson Zeri. Like the other players that we've been able to assign because Matt Burton
put faith in the joint.
Put faith in and he was a marquee signing. It was so important that they retained Matt Burton for that role. players attract other players.
This is a lot of money to pay someone if he's just going to be a focal point to attract other players, though.
All right. Well, as I said last week, and remember this saying, all right? Remember this saying.
I'm ready.
It's not the cost of buying him. What's the cost of missing him? Let's say they wake up today and Dylan Brown stayed at Parramatta, right? He knocked back the offer.
That was never going to happen.
Well, they made sure it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Well, let's say they offered him $1 million and he knocked it back. Where are they?
Well, nothing's changed. They're where they are now.
Nothing's changed, right? So it's not just the cost of the player that you buy or the player that you retain. Sometimes I ask the question, what's the cost of not having them?
Yep.
If not him, then what do we do? If we're not satisfied with it, and they've changed their playmakers so often during last year, they've got 3 or 4 options there and they keep churning them over trying to get a result out of it. They need a marquee player to attract other players or to retain other players. I don't know that they've bought him purely as a playmaker. He's not really a playmaker.
Well, that was going to be my question. Everyone is assuming, and by the way, we're recording this at 8 o'clock on Wednesday morning, and I understand Adam O'Brien's actually going to speak to the media today, so some of these questions may be resolved. But everybody is assuming he's been purchased to play halfback. Now, Dylan Brown, to my eye, with the couple of extended runs he's had at halfback for Parramatta, isn't a halfback.
Yeah. He did a very good job for New Zealand, right? He's a ball runner. That's his thing. I raised the point with Nathan Cleary the other night, and our playmakers. What do you want from them? There are a number of things you want from them, but in the modern game, they've got to be able to run the ball. They've got to be dangerous in their own right. They really have to be dangerous in their own right. And if I go back to the grand final last year, the 2 best teams in the competition, clearly better than every other team in the competition. They were lengths and lengths in front of every other team. Melbourne Storm play with 3 fullbacks and a dummy half. All right, so Hughes, Munster and Pappenhausen are all instinctive, ball-running, dangerous players in their own right. They can pass, they can ball play a little bit, but they're all instinctively thinking about how they're going to make a break. You look at Jerome Hughes is constantly thinking about right foot step, get back inside a leading foot and go from there. Munster is always attacking the line. Pappenhausen is everywhere looking for his opportunity, and they feed off Harry Grant. It's 3 fullbacks and a dummy half. They can play the other roles to bring other people into it, but that's the danger of playing against the Melbourne Storm.
But they do have Harry Grant.
They do have Harry Grant.
And there's only one Harry Grant.
And they used to have Brandon Smith. They used to have a double whammy out of dummy half there and with those players around them. And even the Panthers, who won the comp, who I think had 2 of the best halves in the game in Luai and Cleary, they ran for more metres in that game than any game they ran all year. And I said to Nathan Cleary, in the big games, has the running of the ball been, is it now the priority for playmakers? He said it has to be. It has to be your first thought every time. He said, because in the big games where it's just 5 up for a kick, 5 up for a kick, 5 up for a kick, you get into this transition football, what they call grinding football, high-speed grinding football. And it's why Melbourne and Penrith beat a lot of teams. They've got the ability to have this high-speed grinding football, keep the ball in play, kick to the corners. Their players are so reliable. He said you lose a lot of your attacking vitality because everyone's worn out, which means the halves have to run. When the forwards get tired, you have to run the ball. You go back to the Origin series last year, Game 3, which everyone said was a great game. It was 4-2 at halftime. No one looked like scoring a try. You got 4 of the best playmakers in the game, in that game, and no one looked like scoring a try. Up to then, how were the tries scored? New South Wales scored 2 tries in the second half. How were they scored? Luai ran the ball. Moses ran the ball. 2 individual efforts, right? So the playmaking and the kicking and all the trick shots at the highest level weren't working for the playmakers. And they were 4 of the best playmakers in the game, all right? But it was their run that actually turned the game where it is. And the 2 best sides in the competition, not only have they got great halves in that, but they're great ball runners too. And I think that's one thing if you're looking at potentially what the halves – Let's go 3 or 4 years down the track. Let's go, not even halfway through this contract for Dylan Brown. Who are going to be the first-grade halfbacks in the NRL competition? Reynolds will be gone. Hunt will be gone. Cherry Evans will be gone. Chad Townsend will be gone. Sean Johnson is gone. Jerome Hughes could be gone by then. They're all in their advanced years and advanced parts of their career. In 3 or 4 years' time, they're pretty much all retired. or they should be retired. They're pretty much all retired. Where are we going to replace those? Who are the next wave coming through from there? So, and I think ball running, I think your halves with the ability to use the shape and the structures around them, to use the players around them to get themselves through the line and be dangerous themselves is probably one of the key attributes now of playmakers that sides are looking for. Your halves need to be dangerous. And even going back, it was always Andrew Johns' biggest player. It was always Darren Lockyer's biggest player. It was always Jonathan Thurston's biggest play. They had great ball playing ability, but their key play was to run the ball. And that's the one thing that Dylan Brown can do. Now, with a lot of young halfbacks coming through, they learn to pass and they learn to kick and they learn to run all these plays and all these angles and all that, but they don't learn to run. And Dylan Brown knows how to run.
Yeah, but sure, we know that.
Yeah.
But have they brought him to be a running 5'8"?
I think they brought him to be a running halfback. They've got Caleb Ponga.
So who organises the team then?
They've got Caleb Ponga. He's their playmaker. And I guess they'll try to develop something out of 9 and then someone to partner Dylan Brown. And, Dylan Brown goes there, there'll be a young fella that comes through or someone else might want to go and play for him. But, in Ponga and Dylan Brown now, all right, you've got the makings. You've got the makings of a very, very dangerous spine because they both run the ball. Ponga is a playmaker, but he runs the ball.
I'm trying to read between the lines about what you think about this 10-year deal.
I'm
not giving much away.
I'm not dead set against it because I can see what Newcastle are thinking. I can see what they're doing. Like, it's easy to sit there and say, is he worth that amount of money? Or, gee, that's a big gamble. Or, where are these people going to be in 10 years' time that signed this deal? I get all that. It's easy to criticise it. I want to look at it from the other side and think, well, what are Newcastle thinking here? Why have they made this gamble? What's going to change? If they didn't get him, where are they? What's the cost of him? Well, it's obviously exorbitant. They've taken a big gamble, all right? There's no risk it's a gamble. But at least they've backed themselves to do it. The other cost of that is what if they didn't do it?
Yep.
What do you want them to do? If your team needs a halfback or a 5'8" or a ball-running, playmaker, who's available? Where are you going to get them?
Well, that segues nicely to my next question because Parramatta have to find a 5'8" now. And the name that I've heard repeatedly over the last couple of days is Lachlan Galvin.
Well, that's media talk. That's just That's just scuttlebutt. He was a Parramatta junior. They let him go as a junior. He was a Parramatta junior. Lachlan Galvin, if and when he comes off contract, if he ever does, and I can't imagine West Tigers ever allowing that to happen, but if he ever comes back, he'll be a very well sought after commodity.
Well, you know better than me, but
and he's still very, very young.
Well, his management have said that they're going to the open market.
The media said his management has said that. I don't believe everything I read or hear.
Well, he hasn't recommitted to the Tigers, and
so much so that I don't read or hear it anymore. But
they've tried to get him to re-sign for ages.
That's all scuttlebutt. That's all just.
But that's the truth. He just won't. He hasn't put pen to paper.
He's still in the embryo stage of his career, mate. He's not really worrying about the money or all that sort of thing. I mean, the kid's still learning the game.
You'd give Lachlan Galvin a 10-year contract, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at the same age, I spoke to Nathan Cleary's father about a 10-year deal with the Panthers, which was, they're big gambles, but Nathan Cleary, for me...
That wasn't a gamble.
He was bulletproof. There were no risk factors with him at all. He's going to have an amazing career. He's going to break all records. You talk about a generational player in Nathan Cleary.
I didn't realise he was 27.
Nathan deserves everything he gets. Like everything Nathan's ever achieved and what he's going to achieve, he absolutely deserves every part of it because of the way he's worked and what he did. So, it's not normally the type of career that, the thing I don't get my head around is 10-year contracts for front rowers. I don't get my head around that. I don't get my head around sometimes the money that front rowers earn and are being paid. I realise there's a shortage of them sometimes, and I realise it's a very difficult position to play, and when you've got a good one, it really helps your team. I get all that. But most of them only play 50 minutes anyway. So you've got to pay someone else to play the other half hour that they're not playing every week. And do they influence the scoreboard? Well, they might help a side that struggles a little bit in the playmaking ranks, but the ones that influence the scoreboard are your playmakers. They're the ones that influence the scoreboard. That's why I think a lot of the time they're underpaid. I think the Trebojeviches and the Reece Walshes and the and these players are extraordinarily valuable to teams. Nathan Cleary's and Jerome Luai's and Dylan Brown is just the right man. He's just in the right spot at the right time at the moment for where this game is placed and the shortage of those types of players around. I'm not bagging the Newcastle signing at all. I'm certainly not criticising Dylan Brown. It's not his fault. It's his manager and the way the game is, and they've just taken advantage of it. Good luck to him. He's going to be a very wealthy young man. And hopefully he backs it up on the field, which I'm sure he's going to give every endeavour to do so. He's still only 24 years of age. He's got the best part of his career in front of him the next 10 years, and he'll play till he's 35. He's a strong, athletic young man, and if he's injury-free, he'll play those 10 years out. And he could easily develop into one of the most influential playmakers in the game. I'm not bagging the Newcastle thing at all. It's easy to bag it. It's easy to find fault with it. I'm not bagging it because I've been in their position. I know what they're thinking. I know what they need. And the thing is, if they woke up Monday morning and Dylan Brown rang them up and said, no, I'm not coming, where are they?
Yes, okay.
Once they decided he was the one, they had to get him. Now, whether they've paid a little bit too much for him, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. If they decided they needed that player for whatever reasons, be it development, be it for longevity, be it for attracting other players or retaining other players, being it for profile, being it for his skill set and what they thought they could develop him into, all the reasons they've got. Once they decided they had to get him, they had to get him.
That's what marquee players cost.
They had to get him.
Dylan, maybe you should move into Joey's old house at Merriweather Beach.
No, he shouldn't. But I hope he proves them right, and I hope this contract helps him, not hinders him going forward. There's a lot of scrutiny on him at the moment, and a lot of attention around it. Hopefully that subsides in time, and his performances on the field lay all that to rest. I'm not criticising the mindset behind the signing at all. And to be honest, what other options did they have? What other options are available to them?
Him and his mates didn't go.
If there were three or four marquee halves on the market, well, you can pick and choose and maybe get a little bit more value and closer to their true value. But in the end, to spend a few extra 100,000 to make it happen, old Peter Moore, Bullfrog Moore, told me years ago, many, many years ago, back in the 80s, he said, never miss a signing over $20,000. Now, $20,000 in the 80s, what's that worth now, 40 years later? He said, never miss a signing over $20,000. If you want him, if you need him, he said, pay the extra money. There was one thing he taught me back then, and that's in the 1980s. Never miss a sale. Never miss a buy over $20,000.
Player managers, if you're negotiating with Gus, there's your leverage.
Well, they know it.
Just an extra 100, Gussie. Yeah,
but where you want to be as a club and where you want to be as a recruitment, where you want to be as a club, and this is where you want your club to get to, is the ability to say no. If you've got the ability to say no, you're in a very strong position. No, that's too much money. No, he's not the right type of player for us. No, he's not the right character. No, I'm not going to pay that money to retain that player, et cetera, et cetera. No, he doesn't come up to standard. When you get your club into a position where you can say no, you are in a very good position. And that comes through your development of your pathways and the options that you've got available to yourself and your ability to attract players of the personality and character and skill set that you want. You need to have the ability to say no. Now, there's very few clubs in that position where they get the ability to say no. That's a very powerful place to be. Have the ability to say no, that's too much, or no, he's not the right player, or what have you. Because we see a lot of clubs haven't got the power to say no. And they're forced into paying more, or they're forced into probably taking players, who, they probably don't think it's the right fit, but right at the moment that's our only option. And that's what happens. That's why That's why, and I sound like a broken record, that's why it's important to build from within. That's why it's important to build your pathways. That's why to spend the money there. Spend the money there and create it. Build your DNA of your club from there and promote from within and build your club from within. That's what you're looking to do. And when you do that, then you get the chance to say no. You get the chance to be in control of your own destiny. And the really powerful clubs have been able to do that over the years. If you're a club that's down the bottom and struggling to attract players, you don't have the ability to say no.
That's very true.
You've got to say yes to whatever comes your way, and you're probably going to have to pay through the nose to do it too. And that's why it's a struggle to get out of the cellar sometimes. You've got to have the ability to say no, and you've got to have the ability sometimes to go backwards to go forwards. I'm just rambling on here, but it's something I'm really passionate about, and I've lived through it so often. So I'm not bagging the Newcastle thing at all. For the sake of a few 100,000 and a bit of criticism, I think they wake up today feeling better about their side next year than what they do this morning.
All right. All eyes on how Parramatta responds on Sunday, because they were dead set dreadful.
Yeah, but they will. And that was an aberration. That first 40 minutes on the weekend, it was an aberration. And you could smell it at the ground. I was down on ground level with...
you could smell it?
Yeah, you could smell it. I was down on ground level with Billy Slater. We were doing the pre-match with Danica, and Melbourne Storm were warming up behind us, and Parramatta at the other end. And it was actually 34 degrees down there. It was pretty hot, and sun was all over the field. And I just felt, this has got Melbourne Day written all over it. It just had that feel about it. Just even watching them warm up, I thought this is going to be so tough for these Parramatta players. A lot of them haven't played together. A lot of them have had a lot of first-grade experience. There's time spent, like it's new coach and, their major playmaker's not there. And, there's all this pressure on Dylan Brown because of this talk about the Newcastle deal. And and what happened in the first 40 minutes did not surprise me one little bit.
Oh, I was surprised by the scoreline.
Well, yeah, that's got to. But they scored some freaky tries, Melbourne Storm too. Like as much as they were dominant, they scored some freaky tries as well, and that didn't help. But I wasn't surprised by what happened in the second half either. Parramatta won the second half and were much more resilient and much more physical. Melbourne may have taken their foot off the pedal a little bit, and it's hard to be grim when you don't have to be. That's unlike Melbourne, but that's what happened. And I thought Parramatta, I said at halftime, I said they can build their season on what they do in the next 40 minutes. If they can ignore that scoreboard, which read 46-6 at halftime, I mean, it was terrible. If they can ignore that scoreboard and come out and now say, okay, well, the rest of our season will depend on what we do in the next 40 minutes. I got the feeling that's what they did. And, it wasn't brilliant, but it was a big improvement on the previous 40 minutes. And I think when they got back in the dressing room, it would have given them a lift. Their training will be better this week. Who are they playing this week? Tigers?
Tigers.
All right, well, that's going to be a close game. I think Parramatta will really lift, and West Tigers are looking for their first win of the season. So, there'll be nerves on both sides of the line there in that game, and we'll talk about it later. But, teams can Cowboys. Cowboys were terrible the other night. They got belted by Manly, but they'll bounce back. I'm not saying they'll win. Other teams that had big scores put on them will bounce back. Roosters will bounce back this week. You watch. It won't happen 2 weeks in a row.
Tough task for the Roosters.
Well, but
Penrith at Combank.
The NRL is tough. That's the thing about the NRL. It's supposed to be tough. It's supposed to be tough.
Let's go back to the auction.
Right.
Had fun last week. So our listeners, well, there he is. There's our he was happy with 2.5 million on Monday night.
Nearly got him to sign it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Nearly got him to sign it.
Some of our listener feedback. Some thought 2.5 might be a little bit over the top, but I don't.
I'm just saying that if it went to auction,
that's what he get.
That's what he gets.
So the problem is here, we've trumpeted this like you've got to fit it under 12 million.
Well,
are we going to do that?
The cap will go up over. Well, it depends on where you want to spend your money.
Well, it's up to you.
Oh, well, yeah. I'm not even thinking about adding it all up. When I do it, it'll be 35 million. But like, where do you want to spend your money?
Well. So I'll get you some of the feedback first. Someone said Adam Reynolds at 800K would be their choice.
Adam Reynolds,
Yeah.
he's at the back end of his career. You're just talking for 1 year.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, well, if you want Adam Reynolds, then you've got plenty of money to buy big, strong front rowers and a marquee fullback, and that's where you decide you spend your money. Me, I would spend my money in my game managing, match winning, goal kicking, field goal kicking.
Yeah.
Perfect kicking game, perfect control scenario. I'm saying that if there was a genuine auction, if every player in the competition was off contract and we went to an auction and they like the Magic Million sales, they brought him into the parade ring and said, "This is Nathan Cleary." I guarantee you.
By Ivan out of Mrs. Cleary.
It's well bred. It's well bred. She's Josh Stewart's sister.
Yeah. There's rugby league bloodlines. They're bred in the purple.
Yeah, bred in the purple. I guarantee you he brings 2.5 million.
Okay.
I guarantee you if every player was off contract in the competition and every club auctioned, I guarantee you someone goes to 2.5 million.
All right, so we've sort of put a little bit of a framework around it. This is what Gus thinks these players would attract.
Yeah.
At an open auction.
Yeah.
So I'm going to test you.
Yeah. Now, if you missed out on Nathan Cleary, right, then you're going for the next halfback or what have you. But you might decide, look, I want to buy Payne Haas, I want to buy Tino Fa'asuamaleaui, I want to buy James Fisher-Harris, I want to buy that front rowers of that ilk, which if they go to auction, you can imagine what those sort of players are buying, right? Or if you want a Nathan Cleary, then you're starting to, well, Nathan Cleary is surviving at the moment with Moses Leota, Lindsay Smith, and Liam Henry, right?
And Isaah Yeo.
And Isaah Yeo. Well, he's locked forward, so you might, but your middle forwards, that's where you would spend it there. Edge back rowers, do you go for value in your back rowers, or do you go for work rate? Do you go for defensive players? Do you go for strike players?
Somewhere in the cap, you've got to find value. I mean, you got to find value everywhere.
Of course you do.
What's your philosophy, and where do you look for value, or does it depend very much on what players you have in certain key positions?
Yeah, I think you can find value in all positions, but there are some positions where you need marquee players. And I think your 7, your fullback. I like a really good strike back rower, big strong back rower, and I think in these days, the lock forward is a key influencer.
What about your hooker?
Yeah, I think you can get away with value.
Can you?
I think you can get away with value. I mean, if you can imagine Harry Grant would bring a big number, but then what does that do to the rest of your roster?
Well, Mitch Kenny's the hooker for Penrith.
Yeah, exactly.
He's value.
Yeah, well, they won 4 comps in a row, right? So you can go for an Happy Coruscant. Like Sam Verrills is a very good player. I think he's a very underrated player. You've got to find value somewhere. You might get young wingers. You might buy young emerging centres. You might have an experienced centre and emerging centre. You might have a very good winger and a couple of cheaper wingers. You might have a marquee fullback and another versatile player that can play wing, fullback, centre. You've got to break your top 30 up into so many front rowers, 6 front rowers, 6 back rowers, a couple of locks, a couple of utility forwards who can play hooker, 5'8", and lock. Then you've got your specialist positions, your 7, your 6, your 1. And, but then you've got to manage, well, how much am I going to spend on each position? And if I miss Nathan Cleary, what am I going to do? If I miss Dylan Brown, what am I going to do? Mitchell Moses, what would he bring at auction?
Probably not too much less than Nathan.
Yeah.
What would Jerome Hughes get at auction? Because and again, it's all paper talk, media talk. I read he's on 800,000, but he's value at 800,000, isn't he?
I'd be surprised if he's on that. I'd be surprised if he's not on more than that, because he's had a couple of contract renewals recently. Anyway, I'm not speculating on that, but Jerome Hughes would be a marquee halfback. I doubt he brings as much as Nathan Cleary. He's not a goal kicker. Right? He's not a field goal kicker. He doesn't win golden point games. He's not that sort of player. He's not the one that gets the ball back from line dropouts and kicks 40-20s and does all that. Jerome Hughes is not that sort of player. That's what I'm talking about. Jerome Hughes is a fullback playing halfback.
Pretty well.
Very well. Yeah, absolutely. And they do it so well.
All right.
Munster's a fullback playing 5'8". I think Munster would make a dynamic I think Dylan Brown would make a dynamic
Munster
fullback.
was a fullback.
We looked at Dylan Brown over the last few years, thinking he'd make a dynamic fullback. Dylan Brown.
Who wears in Canterbury.
Sorry.
And when you said we looked at Dylan Brown, you mean Canterbury looked at Dylan Brown?
Yeah, we're assessing players all the time.
All right. This will test you. 2 props.
In my team,
Auction. Who would you? How are we going to do this?
well,
All the props are available.
You're the one that's come up with this.
Well,
So if we auction every front rower in the game, who do you think would earn the most money of any front rower in the game?
yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to pick them.
No, you don't. But I'm just saying that's what. So my idea is, if you gave everyone, what would you spend? What would a player bring?
So who are the 2 of the best front rowers in the game then?
For me, probably a Payne Haas.
Well, he's massive money.
Yeah, and
Aden Fanua-Blake,
Blake, Tino Fa'asuamaleaui,
Tarpanay.
James Fisher-Harris, Joseph Tarpanay. Some really good marquee front rowers around.
All right, what's Payne Haas fetch?
If he was on the open market,
Yeah.
someone would pay him $1.5 million. But if I've got Nathan Cleary for $2.5 million, I can't have Payne Haas.
So who can you have?
So I'd spend a fair bit of money on a fullback,
Okay.
all right, and then I would look for value in most other positions. I'd look for a really, Isaah Yeo I would buy.
All right, let me go through some of the teams this week and see if I can find you a couple of. So you want a marquee front rower and a tradesman?
No, front rowers, I'm happy to go with tradesmen.
Righto.
I don't particularly.
What about Lindsay Smith? Would you have him?
Lindsay Smith's a good player. Max King's a good player. Max King does a great job for the Bulldogs.
But then we got to. How much are you going to pay Max?
Hey? I know what I'm paying.
I know. This is the thing.
I don't want to
This
tell
is
him.
very hard.
I don't want to tell
What
him
he's
I
worth.
paid more. I don't want to tell him I paid more.
All right. Let me.
But if you're talking about front rowers today,
I don't know what the rules of this game are.
No, you made the game.
I don't know.
You mmade the game. I'll tell you what we'll do is we'll say who we think would bring the most money and what they'd pay.
Yes, let's do that.
It's probably an $80 million
Let's do that.
exercise.
All right. Payne Haas 1.5.
I think Payne Haas would bring the most of any front rower in the game. If it all went to auction, I think he's the one they'd pay the most for.
And what about his mate? Who's going to play with him? Well, Pat Carrigan wouldn't be far behind, would he?
No, Pat. I think Pat's more a lock forward than a front rower. Yeah.
I reckon Fanua-Blake could be right up there.
Well, Fanua-Blake was a big off-season purchase by the Cronulla Sharks. You're looking at 2 of the marquee front rowers in the game at the moment, Payne Haas and
I'm a fan of
Fanua-Blake.
Tarpanay. I'm a big fan of Tarpanay.
Yeah, and a lot of coaches in the modern two, they just want workers. They just want fellas who defend very well. They're not necessarily asking the front rower to be a scoreboard influencer or to be a big yardage game getter or, you need that size and that strength. But so many, Reuben Cotter, survives as a front rower in our game these days. They come in all shapes and sizes, these teams. But I think if you put every player up for auction, my opinion is Payne Haas would bring the most money of any player in the game.
In his position?
In his position.
And who'd be second?
Second, I think, would probably be Tino.
You've tried to give him a pub, and he wouldn't even take it. Or at least you bought him a steak at a pub.
That is the greatest rubbish I've ever heard in my life.
I mean, a Scotchville, it's only $36 at a pub.
I mean, you wouldn't even respond to it.
So Payne Haas 1.5, Tino.
Someone would pay him the same.
There you go. All right. So can we reshape this little exercise, please, Jordan?
Well, I wonder what the fans would think.
I agree.
Yeah, what they would think. Who would bring the most money?
Who would bring the most? Yeah.
But
well, Payne Haas would bring the most.
I'm going to spend my money on the 7, the 1, the 13, and probably one of the back rowers, and then probably a really good strike centre. That's where I would be spending. I'd be looking to have my money.
Actually, while we're here, we may as well do the 13 as well because that's a middle.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
At what price am I banging my hammer? Or my gavel.
He's the best player in the world at the moment. Someone would pay him 1.6, 1.7 million. I think, as a lock forward.
There you are. It's pretty good. Pretty good middle. Payne Haas, Tino, and Isaah Yeo. I think Nathan would be happy to be playing behind that.
Well, if you had those three, you don't need Nathan playing behind that.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
The NRL season is here. For the best time in sport, Tab has the best app in sport. Tab, we are on. Remember to gamble responsibly. Our questions for Ask Gus. Do you think we'll see a player make the Origin debut this year, Gus? If so, who? Asks Cohen.
Oh, crikey. For which team?
Anyone, I suppose.
Yeah, well, someone will make their debut. You can guarantee it.
What about New South Wales?
Debut player for New South Wales. Who's on the horizon there that hasn't played yet? If he can get back on the field and play well, which I think he will, Jacob Kiraz, I think, is close to Origin selection.
Terrell May?
Terrell May is a player that could debut. I've got a bit of a smoky. I think Josh Curran could play for New South Wales off the bench.
You've been saying that for a few years now.
Yeah, and do a really good job. He's getting towards that ilk, I think.
Mitch Kenny was in Laurie's preliminary squad.
Yeah, Bronson Xerri's not out of...
Bronson Xerri?
Yeah, very good player, Bronson Xerri.
Crikey.
Lindsay Smith played for Australia at the end of last year. Lindsay Smith could play for New South Wales. Who else?
Any Queenslanders come to mind, or do you not think about Queenslanders?
I don't care about Queensland. Nothing to do with Queensland. Who else? No,
that's a good smattering of options. This is a random question from Hamish, but I quite like it. What's your favourite all-time surname to say when commentating?
To say when commentating?
Yeah, your favourite surname?
Well, I used to like Marty Tapau when he called himself Tapau. Now he's
Tapau. But I think he's gone back.
Has he?
Oh, I don't know. It's changed about 6 times.
I followed him through the tunnel. The tunnel here one day. He was driving home to Manly and he had Kapow. Yes. I used to call him Tapau, Tapau. Every time he got the ball, I'd say Kapow because it was Tapau. He actually had Kapow number plates.
Yeah, I know. That's his whole brand.
Yeah. But then his correct pronunciation is Tapau, is it?
Tapau.
Yeah, Tapau, which he prefers to go to by now. Yeah. I used to call
Marty
Fui Moi Moi.
That's Fui Moi Moi, yes.
Fui Moi Moi.
Galloway?
Keith Galloway, legend Keith.
When coaching, how much did you know about what players were eating? Did you have any rules around diet?
In our day?
Yeah.
We tried to. It's actually a real science these days. The diet and nutrition for the players, rest, sleep, recovery, all sorts of things that they go through is fairly controlled these days. Special sorts of diets that they had. Back in our days, not so much. Not so much.
Particularly when it involved Darryl Broman.
Diet meant losing weight. These days, diet means performance and strength and all those sorts of things. Back in our days, diet was you had to lose some weight because you were overweight.
And Peter Vaughan's obviously a student of rugby league because he's asked you, Gus, you gave Phil Bailey his Origin debut in 2003.
Yes.
What do you remember of him?
Yeah, good. He was from Newcastle, was he?
Played at Cronulla as well.
Played at Cronulla. Was Cronulla and Newcastle?
I think he played for Australia before he played for New South Wales. I think he went on a kangaroo tour.
He was a workman type player. He had a bit of versatility. He was one of them fellows that could play in the backs and the forwards. He was obviously having a purple patch at the time because he got Origin selection. I always say, even if you only ever played one game, it's a badge of honour to be selected at that time. But I remember he got a few blokes debuted. It's
you had a million of them debut when you back then.
Yeah.
It was a totally new team, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, a couple of times when I started in '92, and then when I started again in 2002, there were a lot of debut players at the time. But hopefully we picked the right ones.
Well, I think history shows you did.
We got some good results.
There were some of the other rookies back then, like Jamie Lyon. Had he played?
Jamie Lyon debuted. Brett Hodgson debuted.
That's right. Brad Hodgson.
Luke Lewis debuted.
Yes.
Luke Rooney.
Luke Rooney.
Debuted. This is the 2000 odds, in the 2000s.
Mark O'Mealy.
Mark O'Mealy debuted. Willie Mason debuted. Debuted a lot of players. Fella called Robbie McCormack back in the early 90s.
Yes, I remember that. 92.
Yeah, he replaced
Benny Elias.
Benny Elias was injured. Robbie McCormack debuted for us. Back then, I mean, fellas like Wishart, Brasher, Mackay, the big winger, big centre McGregor, were all debut players back then.
I think Mackay might have played like late 80s.
No, Graham Mackay.
Oh, Graham Mackay.
Graham Mackay.
Graham Mackay,
Yeah.
yes.
John Cartwright.
Oh, here's a list.
Yeah, it was
Luke Ricketson. That's the one you had. Joey didn't get it at first.
yeah, Brian Fletcher,
Fletch. Sean Timmins, one of your favourites.
Sean Timmins. Yeah, a lot of them debuted. Was able to debut a lot of players. Well, New South Wales always had a lot of players to pick from. So.
Trent Waterhouse.
Yep.
Well, they won the comp in 2003, didn't they?
They did.
Gasnier, Cooper, jeez. You had a good selection.
Where'd you get this list from? What are
That's
these?
Wikipedia.
So the players that debuted under me.
Well, no, there's list of New South Wales players.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Minicello.
Anthony Minicello. Yep. And a stellar career. Craig Fitzgibbon.
Wow. Champions of the jumper.
Mm.
Did you coach Gal at Origin? No, you'd have missed him.
Who?
Paul Gallen.
No.
What a shame. 6 tackle trivia. You would have got on well with Gal. This is a good question. How many clubs did Blake Green play for? And then bonus point if you can name them.
Blake Green.
Yeah.
I'll need some thinking music.
Let's get some.
Fans always ask, Loza, what was the best era of league? And I tell them, nothing beats the line-breaking, flick-passing, goose-stepping, Vegas flying, turbo try-scoring, origin drought-breaking, simply the best era of footy we're in right now. And with more market stats and insights, it's easy to enjoy the best era in footy with the best app in footy.
Tab. We're on.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
Blake Green is the epitome of a rugby league journeyman.
Yeah. Who were great? Tyron Smith was a great journeyman. Phil Blake was a great journeyman, played for a lot of clubs. Blake Green played for a lot of clubs, and he played in England too. Are we going to count those? Do you want to count those?
Well, if you'd like to, if you think you can get them, then go for it.
I'm going to say, I won't say 10. I'll say 8 or 9 at least. Let me try and see if I can pick him. I know he started at Parramatta.
Tick.
He went to Cronulla.
Tick.
I think he went to the Bulldogs.
Tick.
Then he went to England. Now,
Yes, he did.
He might have played for 1 or 2 clubs in England.
Play for 2.
I don't know which ones.
Okay, play for Holcar and Wigan.
Okay.
Then in 2015, he returned to the NRL.
Yeah. Now, I know he played for Melbourne.
Correct.
I know he played for Newcastle.
He finished at Newcastle.
I know he played for Warriors.
Yes. You're only 1 club short, which he had 1 year at this club in 2017.
So, Parramatta, Sharks, Bulldogs, Warriors, Melbourne, Newcastle. Let me think. Didn't go to Roosters, I don't think.
Nope.
Didn't go to South.
Nope. Sydney club.
Manly?
Manly. Well done, Gussie. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 NRL clubs and 2 in England.
That's 9.
9 clubs.
What did I say, 8 or 9?
8 or 9. Or between 8 and 10, I think you said.
Yeah. Good player too. He was a player. He was a player that struggled. He was a great junior. Struggled a little bit with his introduction to NRL. Put under a little bit of pressure. Playmaker, put under pressure. Got there too early. They weren't patient with him. Went to England and came back a far better player. Went to England for a couple of years and came back a far better player. He actually got better the longer his career went.
He did. Yeah, he did.
And they reckon he's a pretty good coach. I think he's doing some coaching now. But he had a lot of clubs, but he had some really good contributions at a lot of those clubs. But he was one. We were talking about this with Nathan Cleary the other night. He was a young playmaker that just got too much pressure too early and ended up. I think mentally it got to him, and that's why he went to England at a young age. But going to England did him good. He went over there and went very well. They were cheering his name and gave him a lot of confidence, and back he came and made some great contributions in the NRL. So, yeah, nine clubs.
To our audience.
It's plenty of reunions to go to at the end of the year. Lots of reunions.
You'd have to take leave from the family. Here's a great question for our audience. Rugby League journeyman. Throw in your names.
Okay.
We'll go through them next week.
Okay.
Funny game, this.
It's a little bit funny.
It's a funny thing with this competition. People are on drugs.
That's the last line.
Well, that was Galvin, Weidler, and all them.
Yeah, they are. Rugby League meets MAFS. What happened? Did you get in the MAFS camp?
Yeah, they got me to come in and do a thing for MAFS. They wanted to marry up every MAFS.
So to speak.
MAFS contestant, so to speak. Marry up every MAFS contestant with a rugby league team.
Right. Geez, that's a big task.
Yeah, so Marley and I had to sit down. I didn't contribute much. I just sat there and listened. But
So you were there with them face to face?
yeah, face to face, sitting across the table.
Right.
And
Is there much doing with some of these contestants?
there are some unique characters there. There are some unique characters.
Well, I want to know what the toothpaste looking.
The Knights.
Oh, I should have just said that.
What are you thinking, Gus?
I don't think she's got a sporting bone in her body. I do think she'd be an asset to the West Tigers.
Is there a group called the West Tigers?
Certainly is.
Are they a new team?
No.
No.
Oh, no.
A few of them are worried about them getting home after dark. I wonder if they can find their car in the car park. I mean, there are some people that come across in life and say, oh, you get home before the street lights come on. You're not going to find your way home after dark. I worry. I like my footballers to be able to find their way home after dark. If I'm worried,
and your reality TV contestants.
if I'm worried about them when the sun goes down, well, they're probably not the ones for us. But yeah, the MAFS crew, yeah,
A bit vacant.
I'd like them home before the 6 o'clock news.
Were any of them sharp?
Eh?
Or any of them footy fans, more importantly?
No,
Not one of them.
Really. One of the guys could name the logos, and I think he had a little bit of an idea, but no. One of the girls, I said, she hasn't got a sporting bone in her body. She just nothing. She was a big fan of Herbie Farnsworth. She saw a picture of Herbie Farnsworth.
Oh, right.
And Herbie was all muscled up and sweated up, and she.
He's a good-looking rooster, Herbie.
Yeah, she went on tilt. She
went on tilt.
she was. I don't know how her marriage worked out in the show, but she divorced him straight away. She was on the Herbie bandwagon.
Oh, we need to get Herbie. Herbie may well have a partner, but if not, then maybe it's an option.
She didn't believe that was his name. She said, no one's got a name called Herbie. I said, it's my favourite name. I love Herbie Farnsworth. I love that name.
Oh, Gus, with it's almost something that needed to happen. It was destiny, you and me, you and the MAFS team.
Oh, it's a funny game, rugby league. Takes you places. It takes you places.
Oh.
And looking at them, I got to be honest, I'm thinking, married at first sight, what brought you here? Why did you come to this place?
I'll tell you what brought them there.
Yeah.
Instagram followers.
Yeah, maybe. No, there was a couple were genuinely looking for partners. Yeah, a couple of the girls were really serious.
Well, they've come to the right place.
Yeah, they were really serious. The boys, a couple of the more mature gentlemen were, I think they were a little bit shocked about what happened. But at this stage, of course, when we interviewed them, we hadn't seen the series. The series had sort of been recorded, so. I was trying to get some information out of it about what happened, and glean from it. But I don't know. I don't know how many ended up being successful unions.
I must admit, and I know you have at various times before watched MAFS and followed it, but I haven't really had time this series, so I don't know if there's been all that much success. I've seen a lot of controversy.
It's been entertaining.
So you've watched it, this series?
It's been entertaining. But,
So any of them still together? Or there's a lot of partner swapping going on, I believe.
well, apparently it was part of the gig now. They have a partner swap night.
Right. What, you take someone else's partner out?
Yeah, you go and live with another partner for a night or two or something. I'm trying to catch up because I went to Vegas and Hawaii, so I'm trying to catch up on the colours. But the one I went home to last night, like we were getting ready for 100% footy on Monday night. We were live after MAFS, and Paul Gallen's sitting on the lounge. We couldn't get him up to the thing because he was watching MAFS over on the lounge there, and he wouldn't come up and get his microphone on. And he came over, I said, what's going on? He said, partner swapping. I said, there's always a partner swap. He said, no, they're all doing it. They're all living. And when I got home, I watched a little bit of it before I went to bed, and yeah, you go and live with someone else's partner. Funny game, man. They probably thought, well, it's happened so often, we may as well make it one of the.
That's just an exercise.
One of the challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they go off and live a couple of nights with someone else,
And realise they like this partner better.
Or maybe, maybe not. I think there's one that sort of preferred where she was.
Right. Okay. I would catch up, but I don't think I'm going to get time. Let's have a look at round 2. We've got a full suite of games this weekend, so there'll be wall-to-wall footy, and it kicks off Thursday night on 9. We're at McDonald Jones Stadium in Newcastle.
Yes.
What a place to watch the footy.
Yes.
I'm going up early tomorrow morning because guess what I'm doing before the game? I'm playing golf with Sterlo.
Oh, are you?
Yep.
Where at?
Pacific Dunes.
Okay.
Which I've heard good things about. Sterlo's an ambassador for every golf club in the Newcastle region now since he's moved up to Nelson Bay. So he's organised that for us.
Yeah, well, he deserves that life.
Champion. Adam Elliott comes into the team. Brady Jones goes to 18th man for the Knights in the only change. Big losses for the Dolphins. Fa'asuamaleaui's out with concussion, and Connolly Lemuelu fractured an eye socket. So Oren Keeley comes into the back row. Mark Nichols joins the bench. And Nicarima comes back in with Sean O'Sullivan dropping out. Cody didn't play because of the cyclone last week.
Oren Keeley, former Newcastle boy, came through the pathways
He
at
did too,
Newcastle.
So the back row is Keeley and Plath.
Yeah. The two games, the two first rounds for these teams were very, very similar. 2-point results. Newcastle got the result over the Tigers, and Dolphins just fell short to the South Sydney Rabbitohs. I thought of the two performances, Newcastle looked the better. We didn't see the strike power from the Dolphins. I'm just wondering whether or not it had something to do with the playing surface there in Sydney the other night. They just didn't seem to get into their rhythm, or it could have been that South Sydney didn't allow them to get into their rhythm. But we didn't see a lot of the brilliant attacking football that sort of Dolphins have been renowned for.
Yeah, the Hammer didn't really let loose, did he?
No one really let loose. It sort of didn't happen for them. And I think Newcastle at home, coming back off a win on the road, that was tough to go down to Campbelltown and win that game. That was the hardest game to pick last week, Knights and Tigers. We went with the Knights and they just got home, but Tigers could easily have won. And I think coming back home now, the Dolphins having to travel twice in 2 weeks, and I don't know what their training facilities are like up there at the moment. I suppose I don't know how badly affected they've been, but
did they even go home?
I don't know. It's been a fair bit of travel for them. So I'll go with the home side. Not much in it, but pretty pleased with what I saw from the night in game 1. I thought they grafted it out pretty well to get that narrow win over Tiger.
Friday early game, 6 p.m, Go Media Stadium, Auckland, Warriors versus Manly. Same 17 for the Warriors, and one change for Manly with Aloiai to start. Taukeaho, who had a very good game on debut for Manly, he has suffered a knee problem and won't be playing.
Okay, so Warriors played in Vegas. So they've had a 2-weekend break and they get to go back home. Probably didn't handle their Vegas assignment very well. Pretty much easily beaten by the Raiders. And Manly were outstanding at home. Now, Manly got to jump on a plane and go across to New Zealand, but plenty of experience in their side and so much strike power. It would be very hard to tip against them on what we saw in round 1. But I am expecting an improvement from the Warrior at home, second up, with 2 weeks to get ready after a disappointing performance over in Vegas against the Raiders. They've just got a few little... I thought the effort was there with the Warriors. The execution was poor. I'm kind of thinking too, like Tuivasa-Sheck, whether he's wasted on the wing, I don't know if they need to get him closer to the ball, but...
Is that a symptom of those outside backs they're missing?
Yeah, it could well be. And the new halves pairing, not so much new halves pairing, but it's Luke Metcalf and Chanel Harris-Tavita, they both got experience, but it's a new combination, and one of those two has got to step up and take the lead. James Fisher-Harris, I was a bit confused by their use of interchange. Their two best forwards are James Fisher-Harris and Mitchell Barnett, but they both spent long times off the field, particularly Fisher-Harris. He was sitting right in front of me on the bench. He came off after like 20 minutes, and he was still sitting there with 20 minutes to go. Like he missed a big chunk of the game. Now
He can play bigger minutes than that.
Well, yeah, and they need him to play.
And so can Barnett.
Yeah, but what happens is coaches, they tend to go in with an interchange strategy, and this idea, the first 20 minutes and the last 20 minutes, might be the basis of what you're thinking, but you've got to go with the trend of the game. And I just thought at different stages there, they needed Fisher-Harris on the field. You've got to get him back out there, and Barnett in particular. And Barnett was sort of playing middle and edge, and he was all over the place, and they got some sorting out to do, the Warrior. Manly, too good in that one.
All right, Manly to make it 2 from 2. Friday night footy, live on 9, coverage from 7:30 from Combank Stadium, which is housing the Panthers for the next 2 years. They take on the Roosters, as we've already flagged. Brian To'o returns from the hamstring problem, which I noticed didn't stop him doing backflips on stage in Vegas.
No.
Paul Alamotti goes from wing to centre, Garner to the bench. Casey McLean's all right after that head knock, which was a pretty nasty one, but he's had a couple of weeks off. And there's a chance Liam Henry might sneak in. He's on the extended bench. Now, for the Roosters, no Radley. Oh, geez, that's a big blow. Salesi Foketi, who made his debut last week, starts this week. Makahisi Makatoa's found his way to the Roosters and is on the bench. Billy Smith has completed successful hip and ankle rehabilitation and is listed among the reserves, so might come in. There's no Spencer still. He's suspended until next week. So I suppose if you look at it week on week, they've actually been weakened, the Roosters, with the absence of Radley this week.
Yeah, well, they didn't have him for much of round one either.
Very true.
He went off early, and excuse me, it's getting a little concerning for Radley, isn't it?
It is a problem. I think it might be 6 concussions in the last, I don't know how many years. I think I read 6.
But he doesn't seem.
Or something?
Yeah, I know this one was sort of like a bit of an accident. He clashed heads with a teammate, but.
Oh, yeah, but it was pretty full on.
Yeah. Round one was too bad to be true. There will be a bounce back factor for them, but they're playing against the best in the game, and they're playing them out at Combank. I think there'll be a lot of improvement from the Roosters. I would like to see them give a couple of their young halves a chance in the coming weeks. I know they brought Chad Townsend for a reason, but and bench-wise, there's not a lot coming off the bench for them of impact that I think at the moment, where the Panthers, Dane Laurie, Isaah Papali'i, Eisenhuth, Garner are all on the bench. That's a strong bench, isn't it? I think Panthers will be winning, but I don't think it'll be the kind of scoreline. Panthers aren't the sort of side that they'll just go methodically about their business. It's not as they're not like the Broncos who just throw caution to the wind and can score off anywhere. And when the Broncos have a good night, they can do that to you. I think Panthers will be far more circumspect about their football, and that might keep the Roosters in it for a little bit longer. I think Panther will win, but I think an improved performance from the Roosters.
All right, this is an interesting game. Dragons-Rabbits, a couple of old sparring partners going back many decades there, foundation clubs actually. 3 o'clock on Saturday, Wynn Stadium.
He's a marvel, the old coach, isn't he? He's an absolute marvel. Mm-hmm. Absolute marvel. What they did in round one was pretty extraordinary. With the players that they had out and the way that they'd trialled, and the old coach just got them together, simplified everything, and they just grafted their way and they beat the Dolphins, his former team. It wasn't emphatic and it wasn't brilliant by any stretch of the imagination, but the further the game went, you could just tell what was happening out there. And I think the coach got into the Dolphins' heads, and I think his team got more confidence as the game wore on and were able to nut out a victory. And it'll be pretty much the same here. They will try to starve the Dragons of field position. They'll try to starve them of possession. I thought Jamie Humphries was very good in the 7
He
role.
went really good. Just on the teams, They've lost White into suspension, so Fletcher Myers comes in.
Yep.
Bailey Bentley Hape makes an NRL debut on the wing in place of Tyrone Munro, who's done another collarbone. And Lewis Dodd's on the bench.
Yep. On paper, you can't go past the Dragons. On paper. But
They look like they've got a bit of upside, the Dragons. I know they obviously lost to Canterbury, but they weren't hopeless.
No. Yeah, I would think Dragon beats Rabbit in this one, particularly with the players missing. Yeah, Dragon to beat Rabbit.
All right, 5:30 Saturday, North Queensland. After that, Dog's breakfast. Return home to host Cronulla. Jason Taumalolo close to a return, but we'll wait and see whether he plays. Now, he's named in 22, so we'll see whether he gets a run. Now, the big news is Jeremiah Nano's been dropped.
Yeah.
Crikey.
Yeah, well, he's had some defensive issues for a while, and I think they've sort of walked past it a few times. You know, he's been playing Origin, and he's obviously one of their marquee players. He's on good money up there, good contract, and he's a very good young player, but he hasn't really been held to account with his defence from what we can see at different times. And finally, the coach has bitten the bullet and sent him back to Queensland Cup to get that part of his game sorted out. That won't hurt him.
The comment that Todd Payton made after the game pricked my ears. He said he challenged his players on their preparation physically and mentally. Like, how could you get that wrong for a round one game? And doesn't that come back on the coach?
What are you trying to say?
Well, I find it a curious thing for a coach to say.
It can happen. It can happen. You know, like it's a funny thing off seasons. You know, you go through the off season. I've seen clubs totally lose it in the off season. They totally lose the off season, and they're not ready when they get to the start of the competition, and it takes them a while to play themselves into any sort of form or what have you. Or you know, they get through the off season. They got a lot of injuries, and you know, off seasons can go terribly wrong. And you can also be fooled by off seasons. You think you're doing the work, and you think you've gone well, and you think you're prepared, and then when you get out there for the ultimate test, it slaps you in the face. Now, Cowboys drew a difficult task first up. They had to come down and play Manly at Brookvale, a full-strength Manly at Brookvale, who were, you know, white hot, had 80% of the ball in the first 30 minutes and ran in a few tries. The result was probably over by then. So then emotionally and mentally, they lost contact with the game. They got contact with the result. And they got isolated in their own thoughts amongst themselves. And these are things that we talk about with professional sports all the time, the ability to control your thought processes. So I'd imagine I didn't hear the comment, but I imagine that's what Todd Payton's referring to. And, you know, whatever it is they did good during the off-season didn't come out in that game. So they need to go back and revisit that. Then they'll need to reassess on, you know, what is it we overlooked in the off-season, or is there anything about our off-season that didn't, you know, that we sort of walked past and should have acknowledged. And so there'll be a fair bit of soul-searching, not just with them, but a lot of the sides that were beaten easily in round one. That's what I say. That's why they improve so quickly. But, you know, I've seen plenty of teams turn up and think they've had good off-seasons and think they're ready and get absolutely blasted in game one. And it's a shock. It's a shock. Sometimes the coach says, I knew that was going to happen. Like he could feel it coming, but there was nothing he could say or do to get the players to respond to it. The players thought they were sweet, or the care factor was minimal. I don't know. Sometimes you're in trouble if that's the problem. I don't think that's the trouble with the Cowboys. I just think that they ran into a white-hot Manly side who had a stack of possession. Everything seemed to go their way in the first 30 minutes, and they got such class players, they hurt them on the scoreboard to the point where Cowboys never really got into the game, never got started. So they've got to go back, reassess. They've got a home game now. They've got to start their season again and say, okay, that's an aberration. We'll treat that like a trial game and
Do you reckon he writes it off?
You've got to write it off. Yeah. You've got to go back to the basics and go back and find the things that you neglected or the things that you overlooked leading into that round one that led to that. And mentally, why did they crumble so much? Why did it keep going from bad to worse for them during the game? Why weren't they able to arrest it themselves? Because they never really looked like getting back into the contest at any stage. Manly just completely blotted them out. Now, you can have days like that against a good side at their home ground. It can happen. And, the Cowboys aren't that great away from home at the best of times anyway. So,
Very true.
I think back at home they'll be far more formidable. And I think Sharks won't underestimate them. Sharks went to Vegas. They drew the short straw. They drew the Panthers. Were very, very competitive. The thing I liked about the Sharks, so far as, we've talked about them being a genuine top 4 team. Are they a title contender? Well, they've got to make some ground up on Melbourne and Penrith. I thought they made some ground up in that game against Penrith because Penrith were good, meticulous about their work. They gave the Sharks enough chance to capitulate, and there was
They came back.
There was a point there where it looked like that was going to happen. I think they got out to 24-10 or something like that, and you went, okay, what's it look like now? Because previously, Sharks mightn't have recovered from that, but they got back to 24-20 or 24-22, and went within inches of winning the game. Like we got pulled down inches short, in the last couple of minutes. Penrith went down the other end and scored a try and closed it out. But I was really pleased for them that they made that comeback in the second half, and it will convince them. And it was on the back of Fanua Blake. He was outstanding.
His second spell was enormous.
It was terrific. Yeah. So I think Sharks, having lost the first game to Panthers, it was really good form. They probably beat most other oppositions on that night. Big task to come back from Las Vegas, dust themselves off. Now they've got to go to Townsville, so a lot of road trip in the early part of the season. But this will be a testimony to if they can get it done. I think I'll go with Shark, but it's going to be a tough road trip for them. I think the Cowboys will bounce back strongly, but Shark to win.
All right, I'm so disappointed Joseph Tapano's ruled out of this Canberra team because this was and it may still be a seriously good game. Look, I know the league is, and understandably, wedded to this duty of care, but for Tapano to get 2 weeks for putting a shot on another front rower for that, fair income. Anyhow, and Xavier Savage is out too. So Morgan Smithies goes into lock. Matty Nicholson, the Englishman, is going to make his NRL debut. Was it his debut? He didn't play last game, did he?
I don't think
He's onto the bench, and then Albert Hopewadi comes onto the wing. The Broncos unchanged.
Raiders are fit and they're fast. They're fit and they're fast. And they play a good brand of footy. They're footy players, and looking at some of their players, they look career best fitness at the moment, and they moved quickly. They were just too quick for the Warriors. They beat the Warriors to the punch on just about every important play. Their scrambling defence was good. Attacking the 50-50 possessions was good. Their kick chase was good. They just did all the little things really well, and they've got KO Weeks, and they've got Timoko, and they've got Hopewadi, and these fellas that are all really quick. And
Tamale, the new signing.
Yeah, Tamale.
He was good.
They're quick. Their halves are very constructive and creative. The forwards worked really hard. Corey Horsburgh looks incredibly fit at the moment. Hudson Young's in everyone's face. Morgan Smithies is a good player. But they're up against the Bronco, who are themselves fit and fast, and they've got a lot of flair. It's hard to read into the Broncos' performance against the Roosters. They're going to get far sterner opposition this time. Broncos down to Sydney for game 1, back to Brisbane, now down to Canberra for game 2. Fair bit of travel in their first couple of weeks.
Ricky would dead set be frothing at playing Brisbane at home.
Yeah. This is a real upset possibility. They've got a real good chance of beating the Broncos, because sometimes the Broncos can get a little bit ahead of themselves. The saving grace for the Broncos is that Adam Reynolds and Hunt are so experienced that you think that they'll settle them down and get their game on. And Payne Haas was in brilliant form. Broncos will find it a hell of a lot harder in Canberra than they found it in Sydney last week. I'm tempted. I'm tempted to say that Canberra are going to be very hard to beat.
Tapano's a massive out.
It is. I'll go with Bronco just on the score of point scoring capability, but I'm not going to be surprised if the Raiders really rock them in this one.
Cracking game.
Yep.
Eels West Tigers, 4:00 kickoff from Combank, live and free on 9 from 3 p.m. Is there a bounce back from Para? Sean Lane returns in the back row in place of Kelma Tuilangi. Former Bulldog Jordan Samarani makes his NRL debut on the wing. And another Bulldog, our man Gideon Kartonga, has been added to the bench at the expense of Charlie Geimer. But the Tigers have their gun spine all back. So Dream Bullers at fullback, Api Coruscant's in at hooker, and obviously Luai and Galvin are in the halves.
Yeah, no reflection on the fellas that took their place for round one, but I do believe that if Coruscant and Buller played, Tigers beat Newcastle in that game, that close game. Parramatta, they've had some changes to their lineup again this week. Still, their major factor is time spent playing together and experience and in the key positions. I think West Tigers are going to be far more settled. I think that Api Coruscant gives them the little bit of control and confidence they need around the middle of the field. I think once he's there, then the likes of Luai and Galvin can open up a little bit more. I thought they were very conservative, the West Tigers. They tried to graft their way to a victory, and I think if Api Coruscant had been there, they'd have probably won it. Again, I'm expecting a bounce back from Parramatta, and we got it. Like, they were down 46-6 at halftime against the Melbourne Storm, and they've come back and beat the Melbourne Storm in the second half. That's not bad form. You're beating the Premiership favourites over 40 minutes of football. When you're sort of down and out and lacking in confidence. So they'll be able to build on that for this week. But they've had changes to the lineup again, and some more sort of rookies coming in. They'll be much improved, but I don't think they can improve enough to beat the Tiger. The big thing is they're playing at home, which will suit them. No, Coruscant's back. Api's back. We're all looking to see how this spine combines, and this is the first week we'll see them all in the flesh. Buller, Galvin, Luai, Coruscant. Terrell May was enormous first up. It's a good bench, good strong bench. Taylor De Silva, Royce Hunt, Jack Bird, and Sione Fainu. Tiger to win.
The other factor too on Sunday, by the way, they're saying it could get up to as much as 38 degrees. So fitness will come to the fore, as it will for the 6:15 kickoff at Belmore.
They trained for it all year. They'll be right.
Bulldogs versus Titans. Josh Curran's back. Kurt Mann's eye. Has he been able to open his eye yet?
Yeah, he's open.
That's a shocker.
Yeah, it's open, yeah.
And we ran through the strength of this Gold Coast Titans lineup, which we see for the first time this year, with Keeney at fullback, Brimson 5'8", Campbell halfback, Verrills hooker, Fafita on the bench, and a pack that includes Fodawaker, Campbell Gillard, and Fa'asuamaleaui, and Kiana. Did I mention Keeney? I think I did. And Khan Pereira, who was the top try scorer last year. Plenty of danger.
Cleese Haas. It's a big pack, isn't it? Fodawaker, Campbell Gillard, Haas, Fermor, Fa'asuamaleaui. And they've got Jolliffe and these fellas to come from the bench. Davis and Fafita come from the bench. It's a strong, strong side.
Bearing in mind they lost their first 4 games last year, I don't think Des will be wanting that to happen again.
No. And their first trial was pretty ordinary, but their second trial was very good. They beat the Dolphins in their trial. And the key to it was the attacking prowess of Campbell, Brimson and Keeney. And Sam Verrills is a very good player. He's a dangerous player. They've got plenty of points in the Titans. And they're fresh. They've had 2 weeks to get ready for this game to come down to Sydney. Obviously, they've had to come down because of the storm and train down here, which can only galvanise the group. So that's going to be a very, very tough game for the Bulldog, who were good in round one. Very pleased with their efforts. Sam Hughes, I mentioned last week we had a couple of players in doubt. Sam was fighting to get ready for game one. He injured his ankle against the Broncos in the second trial. Came back a grade 1 syndesmosis, which is usually 2 to 3 weeks. You can get him back in 2, sometimes 3, We've had to rescan him this week. It's a grade 3. He's been in and got surgery. So he's out.
Really?
He's out for 6 weeks, which is a big loss. Disappointing. I don't think it was a misdiagnosis. I think it was just one of those ones. And unfortunately, it's cost him 6 weeks. But that'll be a tough one for the Bulldog at home at Belmore. And as you say, very hot conditions. So we're going to go with Knight to beat Dolphin. Going to go with Sea Eagle to beat Warrior. Panther to beat Rooster. Dragon to beat Rabbit. Shark to beat Cowboy. Bronco to beat radar, but don't be surprised if Ricky and the boys do something there. And Tiger to beat Eel.
And Bulldog to beat Titan. Thanks, Gus. Good fun again today. And that's 6 tackles with Gus, thanks to the tab. We're back every Wednesday. Enjoy the footy Thursday, Friday, Sunday here on 9, and we'll see you next week.